Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be reviewing some of the military matters related to the Judeo-Islamic War of 2023. And here we have a post, and this is a completely unconfirmed post, but I had some suspicions that this was the case. We see the poster Jonathan Tuvel saying that U.S. official confirms to me that the key reason for Israeli Defense Force ground invasion delay is U.S. request to complete preps for broader conflict. Preps include deployment of THAAD and Patriot air defense systems in Gulf, possibly also Jordan and northern Iraq, and arrival of the USS Ike plus 2,000 Marines. Okay, and so we see this other poster, Nuri Vitachi, showing that the United States has dispatched a large number of aircraft carriers, destroyers, jets, and war submarines to the waters near Gaza. Here's the partial list. We see 2 carriers, 2 cruisers, I think that is 6 destroyers, a command unit, 2 auxiliaries, assault ship, transport dock landing ship, plus an unknown number of submarines, and also, of course, many fighter jets. And I've read elsewhere that this is the largest buildup of NATO equipment that has ever happened, I believe outside of a training exercise, though they didn't put that in the post yet. But yes, we are seeing an increasing amount of equipment there. Now, the other possibility for the delay in the invasion is that Israel is having cold feet. They're scared of urban warfare, which makes a whole lot of sense. However, one thing that does not make sense is, given their prior statements and given what is really expected of them to not lose face, I think they have to do a ground invasion at this point. I really think that all the forces are working towards them doing a ground invasion. There's a lot of pressure for them to do a ground invasion, given the things that they've stated beforehand, and given what they view as a necessary response. So they've really exaggerated the extent, the severity of the attack by Hamas. And because of that, it's looking like they're going to need a response, particularly because of the fact that their Air Force's response of just bombing children in Gaza is really swaying public opinion against them. And so we're seeing that a response is, I would say, inevitable, that a ground invasion has to happen at this point. And I could be wrong, but the most confidence I put in anything is about 99% confidence. And I would say with 99% confidence that some form of ground invasion has to happen, given the things that have happened in the past and given the things that Israel has stated. Otherwise, it would harm them reputation-wise, showing a high degree of fear. And despite the fact that I do agree with the Muslim nations in this regard during this conflict, I think that showing fear in the face of many nations that are out for your blood, you just can't do it. And so they are in for a slog. They have to go into Gaza. It's any guess, though, about how many troops they could really put into Gaza for that urban warfare, because they're also going to be facing problems from the north with Hezbollah and with Lebanon in general, which is not happy. They're facing Palestinian refugees and also their allies in Jordan. Jordan's a bit of a weird case because they are very subservient to the United States, but at the same time, they are very sympathetic towards the Palestinian cause. Then you're seeing that there's misfires, or maybe it was intentional and they didn't want to admit it, but Israeli attacking Egyptian targets, things like that. And then you're seeing things in Syria, which we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. And then you're also seeing that Iran, Iraq, various countries in the Middle East are doing their best to directly attack American forces across all the military bases that are smattered throughout the Middle East. And so we see here Mario Nawfal, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Mario here, not the Mario of Mario and Luigi fame. This is the Mario of Twitter Spaces fame, because he does the largest Twitter Spaces. He's kind of the host of those. He talks about another rocket attack on a U.S. base northeast of Syria near the Iraqi borders in the Konoko gas fields. The Islamic resistance in Iraq claims responsibility. So far, from what I understand, there has been, in just one attack that has occurred against American forces, there were 24 casualties. I believe, if I remember reading correctly, that was actually on, I don't think I have it here, but it was the one on the ship, the ships that had rockets fired against them by, I believe it was Yemen. But there were at least 24 casualties, and that's unknown number of casualties on the various bases across the Middle East. There have been, if I understand correctly, suicide drone attacks. They're really a scary situation for American bases in places like Iraq because, yes, they're very well equipped, very well trained soldiers in Iraq. However, for the Iraqi forces that might want to attack America because of the genocide going on in Palestine, all they really have to do is cut off the supply chains, cut off the logistical capacity of the various American bases. And the Americans just do not have enough boots on the ground to secure those supply lines. And so it could be a very scary situation if all-out war breaks out, which is looking increasingly likely at this point. I've seen some of the geopolitical commentators that I also follow and just get a sense for what's going on in the world and see how similar our opinions are. I've seen them very, very, very concerned about how things are escalating. Just talks of how, yes, places like Russia and China would rather just like sit back and watch America decline, but America is just a rabid animal at this point, and so is Israel. And I think it's because of the fact that they're realizing that the longer time goes on, the weaker they're going to get. And so if they want to do something to have the best odds of winning, they have to do it as soon as possible. And so when it comes to a war, you actually don't need both sides to agree to go to war. You really only need one side to pick a fight, and the other side has to respond or they just die. And so right now, it does not look like there are any voices on the Western side, and the Duran has mentioned this as well, who want to de-escalate. I disagree with the Duran a little bit in that, yes, Russia and China want to de-escalate, but they're not going to have the opportunity to de-escalate if America is directly attacking them or their allies. I have another post I'll get into in another video about some various concerns I have that might bring places like Iran and Russia into the war, and how that might also bring China into the war. So just concerning things to think about going forward, because I've said this before and other channels have said this as well. The United States is the closest it's been to World War III, I would say ever, because I don't really consider the Cuban Missile Crisis to be World War III, because that would have just immediately ended in a nuclear war and the wiping out of civilization. We're looking at, yes, nuclear weapons could possibly be used, but I suspect more of a war comparable to World Wars I and II in the sense of it'll be people versus people, machinery, equipment versus equipment, and machinery on the other side versus an actual nuclear war. So I am putting this at the closest we've been to a world war since the end of World War II. So we have a few more posts to go over, and I'll try to go over these quickly. I really wanted to point this out because there was the possibility of Hamas releasing the rest of the hostages. And from every indication we've had so far, and I'm going to get into this in another video as well, the hostages have been treated extremely well. And Hamas wanted to release the rest of the hostages, and they said, our hospitals need fuel so that they can continue running to try to save the lives of the children that have been massacred in your aerial bombing, that have been just destroyed, left scarred for life. They needed fuel in order to keep those hospitals running, and they said they'd release the hostages. Israel, in this post, you see Israeli officials says fuel will not be allowed into Gaza, even if Hamas releases all the hostages. So they had, some hospitals had no fuel left, some had 24 hours, some had 48 hours. This was last night that I looked, so that was 12 hours ago. I mean, all of the hospitals at this point seem to be having less than 2 days of fuel left, if they have any. And so this is a genocide. This is a genocide that a lot of people are watching, a lot of people are cheering on, a lot of people are enabling. And we see that Israel does not actually care about the hostages whatsoever. They only care about wiping out Gaza in order to get more land for their genocidal nation state. So this is the post I'm going to leave you with, because I think it's of enough concern that I think it's worth mentioning. So militias carried out attacks against 5 occupation bases in Syria with suicide drones. Okay, so as I said earlier, American bases all across the Middle East are being attacked. But this is the key part. This highlighted part, the Iranian affiliated planes started using the Khmeimim air base in Syria for the first time. Okay, so you might be asking, Joe, why is that so important? The various other airports, including the civilian airports that Iranians were using to get men and equipment into Syria, those have all been blown. Even the civilian ones, yes, that's how inhumane Israel is. The Khmeimim, however you pronounce that airbase, is a Russian airbase in Syria. Okay. The reason this is important is because Israel has been attacking any air bases that are allowing Iranians to use them, including, as I mentioned earlier, civilian ones, which is a war crime. They were just destroying those bases. So what happens now? Israel does not want Iranian forces and Iranian equipment in Syria that could potentially be used against Israel. Do they attack a Russian airbase in order to stop that? It's a scary thought because it immediately brings in Russia and Iran into what is escalating into a world war. And I've said this before, people disagree with me. They say that China wants to be the best, destroy every other nation. I say no, China wants a stable, calm northern border. They do not want to be surrounded by pro-American forces. And so if there's the possibility of Russia being toppled in a war and being replaced by a pro-Western government, they have to work on the side of Russia at that point because they need the resources of Russia, and they need to make sure that they have some allies on their borders, in their sphere of influence, and not just completely surrounded by various American proxies. And so this situation, the potential for Israel to attack this base as they've attacked bases of other sovereign nations like Syria, could very quickly lead to a war. That's a scary, scary thought. And so I'm going to talk about this in other videos about how these web of alliances could escalate to everyone being involved in the war. And people just don't understand that right now, where there is a West versus the rest, 2 alliances that have formed at this point, and there are various factors that could lead them into war, given some entering the war earlier than others. And so I'll talk about that in another video. But that's all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. It helps us in the algorithm on both YouTube and Rumble. Please subscribe to our channel for more content. As you know, we are publishing long-form content once a day at the very least, sometimes if it's urgent, twice a day. And please also leave us a comment in the comment box. I love engaging with people, talking to people about the various things. So if you have any comments, questions, concerns, critiques, please let me know. I've been working on things that people have told me about, things like my audio quality, things like the background, various things like that. I've put in a lot of money to make sure that things are going better and that I have higher production value. And I'm still constantly working on it. I even made improvements for this video as well. So thank you for all of your questions, comments, concerns, critiques, things like that. And thank you for watching again, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.